Okay, welcome to Coffee and Conversation. Today on Yachting International Radio, I'm Rebecca Whitlock, and today I will be talking to Lee Harris, who is a director at Blue Marine Travel.
Hi, Rebecca.
Good morning, Lee, or good evening from my end.
Yeah, good evening for good morning for you. Sorry, the
Yeah,
other way around.
I know. So I think over the last few months, I've interviewed people, all over the place in Asia and Europe and the States. So I'm kind of, all the time zones are starting to blur a little bit now for
I
me.
know. You had some conversations and some funny times.
Yeah, exactly. So now, Lee, are you able to just, for the people that are listening in today, explain a bit more about your role at Blue Marine Travel and the company itself?
Yes, certainly. Yes, so I'm the operations director for the New Zealand office here, which has been open now for just about a year. Myself and my family originally from the UK, we moved across to specifically open the office here. Um, as you well know, New Zealand is becoming a massive part of the yacht scene, especially with the America's Cup coming up. So it just made good sense for us to have an office here, based here. And we have a team of 8 of us here now, and we are servicing crew flights on and off to wherever they need to go.
Great. Well, now one of the reasons that I wanted to arrange an interview with you today was because obviously with the changing global situation, there's been a lot of industry talk from various companies about how they're managing dealing with clients, with their
Yeah,
customer, with their colleagues. And so I thought it would be great to have somebody who's in that role to come on air to just describe a bit more about what you're doing and how you're still servicing clients now, because obviously that's changed a little bit over the over the last few months. We've all been through this
yeah,
big upheaval of operations and processes and everything. So now COVID-19, the coronavirus, it's affected a lot of maritime crew, especially concerning logistics for repatriation of crew or crew that might be on rotation. So when exactly did you start noticing a change in bookings that you might have been receiving directly relating to um, people that were being affected from coronavirus, operations?
yeah. So probably it was around mid to late February that the pandemic really caught the attention of the yachts and the implications it would have on their crew travel. Uh, we, as a company, had started putting disclaimers on emails, basically to advise at this point that there was the possibility of either last-minute flight cancellations, restrictions on movement for crew. Certain yachts who hold accounts with us personally had advised us of transit hubs they wanted to avoid for the foreseeable future whilst the pandemic was ongoing. And then obviously by mid to late March, just a month later, and the whole thing had really blown up, and crew repatriation was becoming a very challenging situation.
Yeah, of course. And particularly, it hasn't just been super yacht crew, but there's been the cruise industry affected as well, and then you've got
Indeed.
offshore oil and gas. So, it's
Yeah.
just a huge flow of people that are no longer moving like they usually
It,
are.
it,
Yeah,
that's right. It's quite difficult as well. The super yacht industry is, although it's part of the shipping part, certain countries and governments see them slightly different. So, especially like here in New Zealand, you can still have crew come in for the shipping industry under essential workers, but they don't recognise super yacht crew in the same bracket. They class them as pleasure vessels. So it makes it even more difficult for the super yacht crew, bless them, because they're not classed as the same, which is unfair, really.
yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah, so it does make it a lot more difficult for the guys.
Yeah, so there's the differing regulations and the government
Indeed.
restrictions. It's not just one model fits all and
That's
one
right. Yeah,
policy fits all. So now, of course, because of the information is changing so quickly and from country to country, having that accurate information is really
yeah,
important for all the crews that are on board, and especially if they've got to get off the boat and get flights to get home. And so what, other than from February, you were putting disclaimers on your emails, and then you started, sort of having a more directed approach, putting your message out. What else are you doing as a company to take care of crew at this time?
Yeah, so it's a situation that's
Other
changing
than booking
almost.
a lot of flights, a lot of flights.
There is a lot of flights at the moment, which is crazy when you see other parts of travel, the retail sector, which is basically just sort of died, which is really sad. But for us, it's gone the other way this last few weeks. It's gone crazy. But you're exactly right. The situation is changing almost on an hourly basis. So what may have worked for one crew member may not necessarily work for another, traveling the same route a day or two later, due to government restrictions. So in that respect, we at Blue Marine Travel decided to stay away from sending out a mass leaflet of information to our clients, because although factually correct at the time that we would be sending out, 24 hours later, part of that information could very well be incorrect.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
so for us personally, to keep the yachts better informed, it made more sense to give the information on a case-by-case basis. For example, a yacht would send in a travel request. We will look at the information at hand at the time, and communicate that in the reservation that we send back. That could well be transit hubs that would need to be avoided, um, restrictions imposed by the airlines for the cancelling or changing of a ticket. And then also you've got to look at when they get to wherever they need to be, the isolation or the mandatory quarantine on arrival, that they would need to go through. So yeah, and to touch on the question maybe a little bit further, Blue Marine Travel, we're quite lucky that we have reservation agents working across the world, who are continually talking to each other on a daily basis with the information that they have for the areas that they're residing in. Along with that, and official government websites and border control contacts, it makes us in quite a good place to be able to
Yeah.
provide the most up-to-date information.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the positives of having the different global offices that you have for your company. Now, obviously, I'm based here in Europe and you're in New Zealand, and so there's been that gap with how the situation has affected, the flow of business and retail and the industry and ports and things like that. So, can you just share with the listeners your experience being based in New Zealand? Because, of course, obviously, that's affected your global team and you've had to change your day-to-day operations. But for me, I mean, I've got family in New Zealand, and so I've been chatting to them, over
Of
the
course.
last few months, and just it's quite noticeable the difference with how staggered the communication is and the response. So for your team that's based there in New Zealand, how have you personally found it?
Yeah, we're quite lucky. I mean, New Zealand went hard and fast quite early on in the whole pandemic, so we're very lucky indeed. We've now come out of level 3 lockdown into level 2, which is pretty
Yes.
much normal. I say normal. We're almost back to normal life. We've still got social distancing, and all the rest of it. So for us, we're pretty much okay. And I've got family back in the UK, so it's quite interesting to speak to them and see how they're trying to deal with it. They seem to now be getting on top of it a little bit more than what they were. So yeah, so it's been interesting, but the team here have been great. We're quite lucky that at Blue Marine we've always been proactive in home working. So all the guys were set up even before COVID kicked in. We were all set up with computers at home. So it gave the guys flexibility to work either in the office or at home if they needed to. So in that respect, we were still able to give our clients, the high level of service they've always had. There was never any drop while we got ourselves organised.
Yeah.
So we've been pretty lucky here, to be honest.
Yeah, but you haven't had that big transition with having to change over systems to work from home and security
No.
change it, data changes and things like that. And I think that's been something that, particularly for the travel industry, it's been more advanced in the super yacht sector as such. So I've noticed, even just working in media and having to deal with people, companies here, different yacht agencies and brokerage and things like that, that there's been a huge learning curve
Yeah,
for a lot of companies having to now manage large teams that are all working remotely. And of course, we've had Zoom calls, and we've been on webinars and things like that. And so it's been interesting to see, you're dialing in with people, and people trying to manage, working from home and their
that's
domestic
right.
lifestyle taking over their professional lifestyle as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, it's been a challenge. I've got three daughters, and so myself and my wife have both been working full time whilst we were in the lockdown for the 6 weeks here in New Zealand. So our our oldest two are at school, so they were trying to do their schoolwork whilst myself and my wife were working.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So it was it was an interesting time to try and get the balance right, but we got through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people, they've been quite understanding about everybody that has kids at home, or
Yeah,
sometimes people that are in the office, they're quite sociable, and now they're at home without that social connection, so they're having to rely on FaceTime and WhatsApp and all
exactly.
these different tools that perhaps they weren't using as much a few months ago. Now, usually, sorry,
I was, I,
usually
I was just gonna say, I
this
mean,
you continue.
oh, sorry. I was just saying, I mean, we're quite lucky in the age we live. All the world's a smaller place now with FaceTime and messaging and all the rest of it. So, in that respect, as much as you try to keep kids off gadgets, this last 6 weeks has been a godsend really for them. Because if we didn't have them, then we'd be in a lot tougher, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm in a similar situation. I've got two boys, and their teachers are having to upload schoolwork onto, they're getting their online lessons and things like that. So, it's not just continuing your job. You're also having to link in a bit of homeschooling, and I'm going to be an expert in French grammar by the time we all get out the other side of this. So, so it's definitely it's been interesting for a lot of people. Now, about this time of the year, we've usually seen yachts that have come back from the Caribbean and from the States, and they're here in the Med, and they're starting to kickstart their season. This month, May particularly, we've had a few big events that aren't happening anymore: Cannes Film Festival, and of course Monaco Grand Prix. So it's been incredible to see just no boats out in the bay, really. And a big transition. So because there's been so many travel and port restrictions up to now, yachts have been sort of staying in one region, or they've based themselves in the UK, or they've been perhaps up in the Nordic countries. Now, have you noticed from your perspective a shift in demand for flights to and from certain regions, or has there been a change for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And yeah, we certainly have. And in turn, it's faced us with sort of interesting challenges, not just from a logistical point of view, but with regards to crew changes, but also staffing within our company. As you know, I've said our head office is in the UK, and myself and the team here are based in New Zealand. And what we tend to find, or what you would tend to find in a normal year, is that here in New Zealand around this sort of time, you'd see a slight drop in requests and bookings coming through to us due to the time difference, with the majority of yachts being now based in the Med. Yeah. This year, however, it just simply hasn't happened due to the coronavirus and yachts being unable to travel freely into Europe. So what we're seeing here for ourselves personally is an increased number of requests from yachts that have either decided to remain or are stuck in the Americas, whether that be the United States, North, South, Central America. But the problem with that is the ramifications on the crew has been huge. A lot of the countries that make up these areas have either closed off commercial air travel or reduced it so significantly that any flights that are operating are incredibly difficult to get confirmed seat on.
Yeah, there's just a drop in the schedules, and a lot of
Indeed.
the repatriation flights. So the government has put the restrictions on. Look, if you're traveling from A to B, it's literally you've got to be a citizen of that country, etc. So, I mean, 6 months ago, nobody anticipated the change for any industry, really. So, yeah, it's had that flow down effect for so many different sectors and economies. economy as well. Now, have you noticed any trends in marine travel with how companies are now communicating with their customers?
Um, not really. I mean, with I mean, for us personally, I mean, there's a lot more urgent requests coming in. Um, People would set up a crew change for a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance, so they've got some kind of schedule in place for the crew. But obviously, everything now needs to be done ASAP because you don't know what's going to be in a week's time, whether there's going to be more airport closures or border controls in place. So from our side, everything needs to be sent. We the yachts want it now, rightly so, because like I said, they just don't know what's going to be happening in a week's time.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of course, because of social media, there's a lot of incorrect information also being circulated. Tabloid press that are putting, scandalous headlines out there that people sort of freak out. They freak out a little bit, and then it gets shared 5,000 times on Facebook. Before you know it, it creates more work for the people that are actually at the other end, because they're having to deal with something that someone's postman shared on Facebook and they saw and took it as gospel, basically. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, I remember when the millennium rolled around, and there was quite a lot of talk about online travel agents and the booking engines taking, basically they were saying that's the end of travel agents. It's kaput. The technology is going to take over and people aren't going to be booking face to face anymore. But it's my belief that actually, because of coronavirus, people that are experienced with booking travel have actually been really valuable to crew.
I agree.
Yeah, and even more so because I just couldn't imagine a crew member trying to book various crew that are on board, the different nationalities and the visas, and trying to deal with all the transiting spots, and just trying to go on a booking portal and trying to arrange flights. Just it's not so straightforward anymore. So what do you think the future holds for marine travel companies?
I think what people have to remember when looking at online travel agencies and comparison sites is that marine business travel it's not a straightforward job. It's not akin to booking your personal family holiday once or twice a year. And I think in that scenario, online agencies are probably quite attractive, as the booker only has in probability one nationality and one destination to worry about. But now looking at it through the eyes of a captain or a purser on board a yacht who has a crew change of say 10 on and 10 off, there's a high chance that you're going to be dealing with multiple final destinations, multiple transit points and various nationalities, all of which needs to be checked to see whether the routes that are being offered are going to work and are valid for the individual crew member and their personal circumstances. That online booking tool is not going to be able to take into account your nationality and the restrictions that may well be in force at this time. I think so then you have to ask yourself, is it good use of time for a captain or a purser to then have to research all that information when both already have extremely challenging and demanding positions?
Yeah.
Not only that, any changes or questions that arise from the bookings, who are you going to contact to get the answer to the questions that you have? I don't know how often you use them, Rebecca, but online travel agencies, especially at this time, it's almost impossible to speak to somebody.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
could be on the phone for an hour to 2 hours. That's what we've noticed. Obviously, certain airlines that we book, you can only do online. So we have to follow that procedure to phone them. And like I said, it's nigh on impossible to speak to anybody. But to further elaborate the point, I mean, each agent that works for Blue Marine Travel has on average around about 15 years experience within the travel industry. So the contacts and relationships that have been built between airlines, hotels, and other ancillary providers can't be underestimated. And on top of all this as well, we as a company have agreed marine discounted tickets, which you can't find online. You wouldn't be able to buy them through an online portal as such. And these fares are specific to the maritime industry, and in most cases are cheaper than the standard published fare. They give an increased luggage allowance, usually up to around about 40 kilos, whereas you'd only probably get 20 to 23 if you get anything at all nowadays. if you booked online. And they're also fully changeable and refundable up to departure, which, as most people know in the yacht industry, things change, you know, at the top of the
up to the final minute.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. I mean, even when the guys are on their way to the airport, then you'll get a phone call. So for most of our clients, you know, that's a godsend, because if not, they'd be spending thousands of pounds worth of money on tickets they're not even going to be travelling on.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see there was a Facebook group the other day, a crew Facebook group, and there was a similar thing, and a crew member was coming over to the Med for, you know, to start the season, and they'd been stopped in the Middle East somewhere, and basically had to spend 2 days at the airport trying to work out how to change their ticket, and so
Yeah.
it is quite a real obstacle at the moment, and you know, so I really do appreciate you jumping on air today just to have a chat to people and explain some of the solutions that companies such as yours are offering. So just to wrap up, do you have any other advice for crew that perhaps are a little bit unsure about how to progress from now? Obviously, in 3 months, 6 months, we're not 100% sure, but would you just suggest they come through and more
Yes.
for an advisory aspect, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy. I mean, if what we've seen as well, also, you know, during the pandemic, we have seen an increase. Obviously, we have our accounts, yachts as accounts that we've got. We have also seen an increased number of personal crew members who either are looking to get a job and they want to get to a certain place, or crew members who need to arrange their own flights to get back to the yacht, who would usually do it online, and they've contacted us. We're happy for crew members, if they need advice or whatever, they can contact us. We're happy to help however we possibly can, for crew at this time. We know how difficult it is, you know, and it's a worry. We've got to also understand as well that the crew on board. I've spoken to people who are not in the industry and stuff, and they don't. And I'll say, you know, it's really difficult for them. You know, that they're stuck there. And they go, it's not difficult. They're on mega yachts, and it's all, you know, they've got luxuries, but they don't understand that the pressures and the demands and the stresses that come with that position. You know, and on top of that as well, the current situation that we're in, and they're away from their families, and they don't know what's going on. So for us as a company, we're happy for people just to contact us. They haven't got a book through us. If they just need advice on how to get from A to B, or even if they just want to see what kind of fares that we could possibly get them, you know, I would fully recommend that they contact us so that we can at least point them in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Save a bit of time and stress and all these things.
Indeed.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Lee. All the
For
way
having
from
me.
New Zealand. I'm very envious of your little piece of New Zealand there that you're living in.
It's absolutely heaven. Do you know what? It's winter here. We're now coming into winter, and it's bright sunshine, so I can't complain at all.
Yeah, this is so. Now I will put in the details for the video below. The website address for Blue Marine Travel, and if you've got any more questions, you can contact them regarding any crew airfares going forward. So thank you very much, Lee, and enjoy the rest of your day there.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.